Word counter logo home blog. More sign in, 3,038 words, 20,950 characters. Your text might contain writing issues. Check let me be direct with you from the outset, because what leaked at 3:15 a.m. Eastern Time on May 12, 2026 demands directness. What we are witnessing is not a conventional weapons stockpile. It is not a series of isolated bunkers scattered across mountainous terrain. What we are witnessing is the largest underground military infrastructure ever constructed in the Middle East and possibly anywhere on Earth. I am looking at satellite thermal imaging data that has been circulating among American intelligence analysts for the past 96 hours. What it shows is not surface level fortifications. It is not visible missile batteries or air defense systems positioned on mountain ridges. What it shows is heat signature anomalies beneath the Zagros Mountains, indicating a network of interconnected facilities spanning approximately 580 kilometers from Kermanshah Province in the northwest to Fars Province in the south. 16 distinct thermal zones, each one representing what independent military analysts are now calling an underground missile city. In the next 20 minutes, I am going to walk you through exactly why the Pentagon has known about this infrastructure for at least 4 years and said nothing publicly, why the scale of what has been built makes conventional military responses nearly impossible, and why the number 200,000 missiles is not propaganda but a conservative estimate based on volumetric analysis of excavated space. This is what happens when a nation facing existential threats for 4 decades decides that survival requires going underground. Subscribe now if you have not already, because what we are about to cover is being actively analyzed by American military planners right now, and you are not getting this level of detail from mainstream sources. Let's start with the geography, because it explains everything about why this infrastructure exists and why it is so difficult to neutralize. The Zagros mountain range runs for approximately 1,500 kilometers along Iran's western border. The mountains are primarily limestone and sedimentary rock formations, some peaks reaching over 4,500 meters in elevation. This is not granite. It is softer stone, which means it is easier to excavate but still provides substantial overhead protection. To put that in perspective, American bunker buster munitions, specifically the GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator, can penetrate approximately 60 meters of reinforced concrete or 8 meters of hardened rock before detonation. Iranian facilities built under 200 to 400 meters of mountain stone are effectively immune to conventional strikes. This means the infrastructure we are discussing is not vulnerable to airstrikes. It is not vulnerable to cruise missiles. It is vulnerable only to tactical nuclear weapons, and the geopolitical consequences of that option make it effectively off the table for any American administration. According to reporting by The Telegraph, and subsequently confirmed by multiple Western military analysts, including those writing for Jane's Defense Weekly, Iran has been excavating these facilities since at least 2018, possibly earlier. The scale became apparent only when commercial satellite operators began detecting unexplained dust plumes and heavy vehicle traffic in remote mountainous regions during the period between 2021 and 2023. Dr. Jeffrey Lewis at the Middlebury Institute of International Studies has stated publicly that the excavation volumes observed through satellite analysis are consistent with facilities capable of storing and maintaining tens of thousands of medium and long-range ballistic missiles. Subscribe if you are watching this and realizing you are not getting this level of analysis anywhere else. Now, let's talk about what Iran actually built and why American intelligence is calling this a strategic game changer. Announcement number 1: the underground missile cities are not storage depots. And this distinction matters more than anything else because it fundamentally changes the strategic calculus. These are not warehouses where missiles sit idle, waiting to be transported to launch sites. They are fully integrated launch facilities with hardened firing positions, automated reload systems, and independent command and control infrastructure. That means missiles can be fired directly from underground positions without ever exposing them to satellite surveillance or preemptive strikes. According to detailed analysis published by Defense Security Asia and corroborated by Israeli intelligence sources cited in Haaretz, each missile city contains between 12 and 20 firing tunnels. These tunnels extend horizontally into mountainsides with reinforced blast doors that open only during the final seconds before launch. The missiles sit on transporter erector launchers inside climate-controlled chambers. When launch orders are received, the TLs move to firing positions, blast doors retract, the missile fires, and the doors close again within 90 seconds. Total exposure time of the missile to satellite observation is less than 2 minutes. Iran currently operates at least 16 of these facilities that Western intelligence has confirmed. 16 facilities with an average of 15 firing tunnels each means 240 simultaneous launch positions that cannot be targeted preemptively because their exact locations within mountain complexes are unknown until the moment of firing. Former CIA analyst Norman Rule described this infrastructure during a February 2026 briefing as creating what he called an effectively unsolvable targeting problem for conventional strike planning. The storage capacity is what makes the number 200,000 missiles credible rather than propagandistic. Volumetric analysis based on excavation debris and tunnel dimensions suggests each facility contains between 80,000 and 120,000 cubic meters of usable interior space. A Fateh 110 short-range ballistic missile, which forms the backbone of Iran's arsenal, is approximately 9 meters long and requires roughly 12 cubic meters of storage space, including maintenance access. Simple mathematics indicates each facility could house between 6,000 and 10,000 missiles. Multiply that across 16 confirmed facilities, and you reach numbers between 96,000 and 160,000 missiles. Add in smaller regional facilities, mobile launcher reserves, and production capacity over the past 6 years, and 200,000 total missiles becomes not only plausible but conservative. Received. That is announcement number 1. Announcement number 2, and this is the part Western militaries have confirmed with increasing concern: these missiles are not aimed primarily at Israel. Stay with me, because this is where the narrative completely changes, and where the strategic implications become impossible to ignore. The majority of missiles stored in the Kermanshah and Loristan province facilities are Khaibar Shikan and Fata 1 systems. These are medium-range ballistic missiles with operational ranges between 1,400 and 1,450 kilometers. From Kermanshah, that range covers every major American military installation in Iraq, Syria, Jordan, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, the largest American air base in the Middle East, hosting over 10,000 personnel, is 1,240 kilometers from Kermanshah. Al-Assad Air Base in Iraq is 380 kilometers. Naval Support Activity Bahrain, headquarters of the U.S. Fifth Fleet, is 1,180 kilometers. What this means in practical terms is that Iran has the capability to launch simultaneous saturation strikes against every American base in the region from protected underground positions that cannot be preemptively destroyed. The Pentagon conducted classified wargame simulations in late 2025, details of which were leaked to the New York Times in March 2026, modeling Iranian strikes using just 30% of estimated missile inventory. The results, according to sources familiar with the games, showed catastrophic damage to American air defense networks within the first 6 hours of conflict and effective neutralization of forward-deployed air power within 24 hours. This is not speculation. This is the conclusion of American military planners using the Pentagon's own simulation models. General Kenneth McKenzie, former commander of U.S. Central Command, stated in a November 2025 interview with Foreign Affairs magazine that Iran's missile capabilities now represent the most serious conventional military threat to U.S. force projection in the Middle East since the height of the Soviet Union. See, those are not the words of an alarmist. Those are the words of the officer who commanded American forces in the region for 3 years. The second-order effects are equally significant. Saudi Arabia's major oil infrastructure, including the Abqaiq processing facility, which handles approximately 50% of Saudi crude oil production, sits well within range of missiles fired from southern facilities near Shiraz. Ras Tanura Terminal, the largest offshore oil terminal in the world, is 650 kilometers from Iranian territory. A single successful strike on Abqaiq, similar to the 2019 attack, but with larger payloads and greater accuracy, could remove between 5 and 7 million barrels per day from global markets immediately. Insurance underwriters at Lloyd's of London have already begun factoring these risks into coverage for Gulf shipping and energy infrastructure. Reuters reported in April 2026 that premiums for war risk coverage in the Persian Gulf have increased by 340% since January 2025. That is not a political statement. That is the insurance industry's mathematical assessment of strike probability and potential losses. Received. That is announcement number 2. Announcement number 3, and this one almost nobody in the mainstream media is connecting correctly. The construction of this infrastructure was observed in real time by American intelligence agencies, and they made a deliberate decision not to publicize it or take action to prevent it. This was not an intelligence failure. This was a strategic choice. According to investigative reporting by investigative journalist Seymour Hersh, published in April 2026, the CIA briefed President Biden on the scale of Iranian tunnel construction in early 2022. The briefing included satellite imagery, signals intelligence confirming large-scale concrete and steel procurement, and estimates of storage capacity under construction. The administration faced a choice: publicize the findings and demand international action, or stay silent to avoid escalating tensions during ongoing nuclear negotiations. They chose silence. The JCPOA revival talks were considered the highest diplomatic priority. Revealing the Missile City construction would have killed any remaining chance of reviving the nuclear deal, hardened congressional opposition, and potentially triggered Israeli preemptive strikes that could have drawn the United States into a regional war. So, American intelligence watched in real time as Iran excavated hundreds of thousands of cubic meters of rock, poured reinforced concrete by the ton, and installed what is now the most sophisticated underground military infrastructure outside of China and North Korea. The Biden administration calculated that keeping diplomatic channels open was worth the risk of allowing this infrastructure to be completed. The Trump administration, which took office in January 2025, inherited the completed infrastructure and immediately faced the reality that there was no longer any feasible military option to destroy it. By the time American policy shifted toward maximum pressure and threats of military action in late 2025, the strategic window had closed. Think carefully about what this represents. When the United States detects a rival power constructing game-changing military infrastructure and chooses not to act for 4 consecutive years, that is not oversight, that is strategic paralysis. American military dominance in the Middle East was built on the assumption that air power could eliminate any threat within 48 to 72 hours of decision. Iran has now constructed an arsenal that air power cannot reach and cannot destroy. The entire foundation of American military strategy in the region has been undermined, and it happened while Washington watched. Received. That is announcement number 3. Now, let's talk about what is really happening behind the headlines, because there are 2 stories playing out simultaneously, and the mainstream media is only covering one of them. The public story is about nuclear negotiations, sanctions relief, and diplomatic posturing. The private story, the one being discussed in closed-door Pentagon briefings, is about how the United States maintains any credible deterrent against an adversary it can no longer threaten with conventional military force. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin visited Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE in February 2026. The official purpose was to discuss regional security cooperation. The actual purpose, according to sources who spoke with Bloomberg News, was to reassure allies that American security guarantees remain credible despite the changed strategic environment. He was not convincing. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant stated publicly after the meeting that Israel is now developing its own strategic options independent of American coordination. Saudi Arabia has accelerated military procurement discussions with China and Russia. The UAE is purchasing Chinese air defense systems to supplement American Patriots. This is what strategic abandonment looks like in slow motion. American allies are not declaring neutrality. They are not publicly breaking with Washington. They are quietly hedging their security bets because they no longer believe American air power can protect them from Iranian retaliation if a conflict occurs. When you lose the ability to credibly threaten force, you lose the ability to shape behavior. That is deterrence theory 101, and it is collapsing in the Middle East right now. President Trump responded to these developments by threatening massive retaliation if Iran takes any hostile action against American forces. This has not notably changed Iranian behavior. Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei stated in a March 2026 speech that Iran has achieved strategic parity with the United States in the regional theater and will not be intimidated by threats. He was not posturing. He was describing a military reality that American generals privately acknowledge. If you operate a business dependent on Gulf energy supplies, what is happening beneath the Zagros Mountains is not a foreign policy story. It is a supply chain vulnerability story. If you are tracking energy markets, this is not a geopolitical abstraction. This is the single largest underpriced risk in global commodity markets right now. The strategic infrastructure Iran has built could, in a matter of hours, remove between 15 and 20 million barrels per day of oil production and transit from global markets. That is roughly 20% of global supply. The price implications are almost incalculable. This pattern has repeated throughout history, and every time it repeats, the outcome is the same. Let me take you back to the Peloponnesian War between 431 and 404 BCE. Athens and Sparta, the 2 dominant powers of the Greek world, went to war. It lasted 27 years. Both sides were catastrophically weakened. Tens of thousands died. And who ultimately dominated the Greek world after both powers exhausted themselves? Macedon. Philip II and his son Alexander conquered a fragmented Greece that had destroyed itself through prolonged conflict between its 2 strongest states. The parallel is exact. The United States is Athens, the dominant naval and economic power projecting force across a vast theater. Iran is Sparta, the fortified land power that cannot be conquered through conventional naval and air supremacy. Both are locked in an escalating conflict that neither can decisively win without costs that would undermine their broader strategic position. And who benefits while these two powers exhaust resources and attention on each other? China. Beijing is Macedon in this scenario, building economic and military power while its rivals focus elsewhere. China is Iran's largest oil customer, purchasing approximately 90% of Iranian crude exports under sanctions. China provides the technology and components Iran needs for advanced weapons systems. China benefits from every dollar the United States spends on Middle East military deployments instead of Pacific deterrence. And China is watching very carefully as American military dominance in one theater crumbles, drawing conclusions about what that means for American credibility in the South China Sea and Taiwan Strait. This is strategic opportunity wrapped in regional chaos, and Beijing is playing the long game while Washington remains locked in Middle Eastern conflicts it can no longer win decisively. So where does this leave us? Let me give you three clear paths forward because there is no honest middle ground here, and the path chosen will determine whether we see regional war or an uneasy strategic stalemate. Path 1. Diplomatic accommodation. The United States accepts that Iran has achieved regional military parity, abandons regime change objectives, and pursues a comprehensive détente that includes lifting sanctions in exchange for constraints on missile exports and support for proxy forces. This would require Washington to abandon decades of maximum pressure policy and accept a multipolar Middle East where Iran is a legitimate power broker. The Biden administration considered this path. The Trump administration has rejected it entirely. Likelihood, low under current political conditions, but increases significantly if a crisis demonstrates the costs of continued confrontation. Path 2. Limited conflict and managed escalation. A trigger event, perhaps an Iranian proxy attack on American forces, or a failed assassination attempt on an Iranian official, leads to American strikes on Iranian facilities. Iran retaliates with missile barrages against American bases. Both sides absorb losses but pull back from full-scale war due to the catastrophic economic consequences. This becomes the new normal: sporadic exchanges of fire, periodic escalation, permanent instability, likelihood moderate to high. This is essentially the current trajectory. Path 3. Catastrophic miscalculation. Either the United States or Israel conduct strikes believing they can deliver a decisive blow. Iran responds with the full weight of its missile arsenal, targeting American bases, Saudi oil infrastructure, and Israeli cities. Global oil markets collapse. The United States is drawn into a prolonged regional war that achieves no strategic objectives while draining resources needed for competition with China. This is the scenario Pentagon war games consistently show as most damaging to American long-term strategic interests. Likelihood, low but non-zero, and increasing with each escalatory cycle. I think we are closer to path 2 than the headlines suggest. The infrastructure Iran has built makes path 1 politically impossible for Washington to accept without a face-saving framework that does not currently exist. But it also makes path 3 so costly that rational actors should avoid it. What we are likely seeing is the emergence of a new strategic equilibrium in the Middle East, where American military dominance has ended but no single power has replaced it. This is multipolar regional competition, and it is messy, unstable, and permanent. Here are the questions I want you to take away. First, if American allies in the region are hedging their security bets, what does that mean for the dollar's role as the primary currency for oil transactions? Second, if Iran has achieved effective deterrence against American conventional military action, does that embolden proxy forces in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen to escalate operations? Third, how does China exploit American strategic focus on the Middle East to advance objectives in the Pacific? Tell me in the comments what you think the administration does next. Tell me if you believe diplomatic accommodation is possible or if we are locked into permanent, low-intensity conflict. We will keep tracking every development in the Zagros Mountains, the Strait of Hormuz, and the broader strategic competition defining this decade. That is what this channel does every single day. Subscribe now. Share this analysis with everyone in your network who is trying to understand why energy markets are increasingly unstable and why American foreign policy in the Middle East seems paralyzed. Turn on notifications so you do not miss our next deep dive into the strategic implications of Iran's missile capabilities, and we will see you in the next analysis. 3,038 words, 2,950 characters detect even the most difficult to spot writing mistakes. What is word counter? Apart from counting words and characters, our online editor can help you to improve word choice and writing style, and optionally help you to detect grammar mistakes and plagiarism. To check word count, simply place your cursor into the text box above and start typing. You'll see the number of characters and words increase or decrease as you type, delete, and edit them. You can also copy and paste text from another program over into the online editor above. The autosave feature will make sure you won't lose any changes while editing, even if you leave the site and come back later. Tip: bookmark this page now. Knowing the word count of a text can be important. For example, if an author has to write a minimum or maximum amount of words for an article, essay, report, story, book, paper, you name it, Word Counter will help to make sure its word count reaches a specific requirement or stays within a certain limit. In addition, Word Counter shows you the top 10 keywords and keyword density of the article you're writing. This allows you to know which keywords you use how often and at what percentages. This can prevent you from overusing certain words or word combinations and check for best distribution of keywords in your writing. In the details overview, you can see the average speaking and reading time for your text, while reading level is an indicator of the education level a person would need in order to understand the words you're using. Disclaimer: we strive to make our tools as accurate as possible, but we cannot guarantee it will always be so. How it works. Details: 3001 adi 38 words, 20,950 characters, 100 mi-fi by mbides, 85 sentences, 41 paragraphs. College graduate reading level 11 minus 25, sec reading time 17 minus 26, sec speaking time more 12. Share flow score, new: improve your writing's flow and variety using sentence highlights. Keyword density: x1, x2, x3 35, 4%, American 23, 2%, military 20, 2%, strategic 17, 2%, Iran 16, 2%, infrastructure 14, 1%, missile 14, 1%, missiles 12, 1%, middle 12, 1%, facilities 12, 1%. Now share activities. Keep track of the number of words you write each day using the activity button. Site, map home, blog, more tools, help, word counter, embed, word counter, contact, us, privacy policy report, a bug terms, follow Facebook, Twitter.